Hey guys, thanks for joining me, and if you like what you see, please subscribe.
Hi friends, welcome to Sharp Ends. I gave my father a perfectly good Begleiter 2 for Christmas, and he has been EDCing it religiously, uses it for everything. He's always carried a pocket knife, and usually a bad cheap knife, and this is a step up for him for sure, and he absolutely loves this knife. It's 154 cm, it's got carbon fiber, which he really likes, this red and black. It's really his style, honestly. So I was very happy to give it to him. You can see by the pocket clip that, you know, he's definitely been carrying it every day. It was not sharp at all last night, still isn't sharp. I plan on using the KME sharpening system to sharpen it. Before I do that, I'm going to tune it up. First off, I just want to point out, this is a button lock, and it runs on bearings, and I want you to listen to this as I open this. You hear that? So something's wrong in there. It's probably just dirty. Hopefully a bearing ball hasn't fallen out. If it has, we'll have to take measures. So I'm going to go ahead and take it apart. First off, these back two screws are T6 Torx screws, and this one is a T8. For those of you who have taken knives apart a lot, this is going to be fairly... I'm making this towards people who haven't taken knives apart, so I'm going to over-explain some stuff. And like that, also anyone who might have a Begleiter or any kind of knife, this is any kind of button lock, or, you know, this is basic information here. So even if it's not the same kind of lock, the same principles are going to apply no matter what you're doing. First off, this knife has standoffs in the back here, these little barrel standoffs. So it doesn't have a back spacer, but barrels. This is a flipper knife. Push down on this and it comes out. The back is the T6. And I'm going to take those screws out. And what I like to do is take those screws out and immediately lose them. No, I'm just joking. I'm going to put them in order. I'm going to put them in order of that they came out. I'm also going to take this off on the non-clip side, or the show scale side. That's where the button is. And so I think it's going to be easier to disassemble it that way. I'm not going to... The scales, this outside handle material, is covering liners inside. I'm probably not, depending on what I find on the inside, going to take apart. There we go. And I'm putting it in order, so that's over there, and I'm working as if the pivot is going to be here. I'm probably not going to take the scales off of the liners, depending on what I find inside and how dirty it really is. That could change. Some knives you want to take apart with the blade out, and some you want to take apart with the blade in. I've chosen to take this apart with the blade in. I have cleaned and maintained this knife before, but it's been a very long time. I'm going to go ahead and open it now. See what we can do. Okay, so there's the liner off, and you can see inside of the fiberglass here. Still looking really nice. And then here's the button lock. So what do we have? So as far as I know, this should be free. There's also a spring in here, and I need to be careful of that. But maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I do need to take the other side apart as well. Let's try taking the pivot out. So the pivot, I believe, locks. There's going to be a D-shaped. The pivot isn't perfectly round. It has a little notch cut out of it so that you can orientate it and then tighten it down without having to a free spinning pivot, right? And I'm just using something to poke it through all the way. And now this knife is going to fall apart. You can see in there the bearings, and the button has just come out because there's a spring back there. I want to be careful that I don't lose the spring. And I want to kind of pay attention as I take this apart that I see all the different parts correctly. Here are the washers. They're little baby cage bearings. Put that over here. I'm not going to care about, well, I'm going to try to maintain which one goes on which raceway. It doesn't really matter though. You can see it's fairly dirty here. That's the notch for the button. And now I'm going to carefully take this button out, and there's the spring that goes behind it. And then this should lift off. Perfect. And then this pivot, I'm going to go ahead and take all the way out. And the pivot goes on the clip side. Let's see if I can get this focused for you. You can see this is that D indentation I was talking about. When you're taking apart a knife, it's really important that you use high quality Torx bits. The spring I'm going to put by the button. And it's going to roll away on me. I like the Wiha drivers. I like this stubby little Wiha guy. And in fact, this one actually has bits in here. I've gotten the Wiha full toolkit as well here for extra bits. And I have some other drivers too, but this is the one that I end up using the most. So now the next thing I want to do is I want to clean it, and you want to clean it with isopropyl alcohol. And I've gotten some of these little small containers from Amazon, and they're super little cheap little things, and I fill up so I don't have to carry the big bottle around. I use plain Q-tips, and I'm going to go through here and clean this up. Now this is the one with this is the clip side. So the barrel spacers have collected a lot of dirt, so I'm going to go ahead and polish them up. And of course this has been in my dad's pocket. He's not well, he's cleanly, but you know, he's always carrying crap around in his pocket, so these are going to be fairly dirty. I'm not going to take the scale off of the liner. Just going to clean it up. You can see it's getting real dirty. The other thing you can do too is use a microcloth, or not a microcloth, but I also from Amazon. They have these cloths that come in a variety pack of colors, and I can't remember how many come in a pack. It was like 100 or 50 of these towels that won't disintegrate when you use them, you know, for an abrasive purpose. And so I just have those kind of in the shop, and I use them. I'm going to clean the raceway where the where you can see the washer has been, and I'm going to clean inside too. Get that all nice and done. All right, so that one's good. And now I'm going to take the liner on this guy and start this guy up. Again, I'm going to clean inside the pivot area and the pivot area. And this is the stud. That stud will fall out. So it's being held in there right now because it's just, that's where it used to be. And entropy, things like to stay where they are if you don't mess with them too much. Yeah, I can definitely see that he's spilled some Coke or some kind of substance in here, which makes me think that this has been a little gummed up. All right. And yeah, the side next to the scale, pretty clean. Although there's a little bit of stuff, schmutz, here where the pivot hole is. Next, I'm going to clean the blade. Some people would rather sharpen the knife first and then do this maintenance afterwards, because some little pieces of metal shavings could get inside the knife and the bearings and blah, blah, blah. And in practice, I suppose that is definitely true. But in reality, and I'm doing the inside of the pivot and the racetracks really well with alcohol. But in reality, I haven't really noticed a huge difference. But you might want to bear that in mind. If you're going to be sharpening it, you might want to sharpen it first and then tear it apart and maintain it second. But I don't think it's the end of the world if you do it in this reverse order. The washers themselves look okay. This one looks okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing what was making that noise. Maybe it was just dirt in the track, and also the fact that it just hasn't been oiled in a long time. These feel astoundingly dry, and I know for a fact that when I last maintained this, I definitely oiled it. So I'm taking that cloth that I was talking about, and I'm rubbing it in here. I put some alcohol on the cloth, and now I'm just cleaning these bearings really well. Lastly, I want to clean not lastly, but next I want to clean the pivot bolt itself. And again, we can see some wear marks from the bearings and the blade. That will get oiled as well. Oop. There we go. I'm just going to keep dropping that. I'm cleaning a little bit of the Loctite off of the threads here. Pivot screw. I'm going to take the button now. And I am going to do this, and you can see a little bit where the button fits in. Spring I'm going to leave alone. Back screws I'm going to leave alone. All right. Good, good. I'm just going to put a screw tip on these on the clip just to make sure that they're still tight. Sometimes they can loosen up and you can lose a screw, but they're still tight. And the last time that I put these on, I'm positive that I put on some Loctite, so they seem fine. All right, next it's time to put the knife back together and oil everything up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the boop, boop, boop. So this is the show side, and you're going to put the pivot in here, and the pivot needs to line up. There we go. So the pivot lined up with the groove in the metal, and now it's not free spinning. Next, I need to oil it. I have a couple of different choices of oil. I have this Hops No. 9 lubricating gun oil, and I also have heavy and light KME knife pivot lube. I think I'm going to go ahead and use the Hops. I got this on Amazon, fairly cheap. It has this needle applicator, which is nice. Any of the knife pivot ones are going to have some of that, and you don't want to over oil it. Sometimes it's good to actually take a Q-tip, put the oil on the Q-tip, and then just lightly apply a little bit. A little bit's going to go a long way, and I'm also going to put a little bit on this outside racetrack. And then I put on one of the bearings. The bearing now is sitting on oil, and on the top of it then I'm going to just put a little bit, and when this works and is opened a couple of times, that oil will spread throughout there. Again, you really do not. I put on the most minuscule amount I can, knowing that it's going to work in there and like that. If you put too much oil in, when it's sitting in your pocket and stuff, it's going to get a lot of grime and grease and crap in there. This next part is the part where I am probably going to have forgotten how to put the knife together together correctly in regards to the button lock and how I want to put that together efficiently. I've put the spring back in its hole. I guess before I start working with that, I'm going to put just a little bit of the grease in that track. Put this guy down in here. Put a couple of drops on top of that. Actually, instead of doing that, I'll just put a little bit where this racetrack is. Okay. I am not going to put any oil on the button lock itself. That can sometimes cause lock stick. In the past, I have put some heavy oil on it, but I don't think that that is the correct thing to do. I'm putting the button on the spring, and this is the part that's going to be a little janky because it's been a while since I've done this, but all right, spring is on the button, and now I need to turn this over and put it with a knife out. I need to put this on here. I mean, the screen here does not necessarily help. situation. All right, so yeah, this narrow part needs to go on kind of as the blade goes on too. So what I'm going to do is just lift up the blade. I'm going to put the button lock here in its little groovy part that it rides in. And then I'm going to put down the blade on the pivot. Actually, it rides down here, not up there. Oh, I have it backwards. Probably would help if I didn't have it backwards. All right, we're going to try this again. I'm going to put it in its right one here. Now I'm going to attempt to put it on actually in the closed position rather than the open position. There we go. All right. And then I need to make sure the button goes all the way in. We're good. Now the spring is here. I'm going to put the spring here, inside this little hole. And then I just need to make sure it gets captured in the right place. So I'm going to put my head down here so I can see what I'm doing. Here we go. And we're good. All right. Now I'm going to use just a little bit of Loctite on this. I'm going to use my little tool, my little spring tool, bar tool for watches. You can use any pointy small object for this. I'm going to put it on the tip itself, and then I'm going to put it inside the threads rather than on the outside of the screw. Yeah. So I can tell you right now that I have put the pivot bolt on the different, I think that the last time I put this together, I put it together the wrong way. There we go. Because the flat, well, I don't know if I did or not, but I'm putting it on so that the flat side of the pivot is here next to the button rather than the Torx head side over here, so that this looks nicer and flatter, right? But when I took it apart, that screw was there. And now I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of Loctite. You really don't need much inside the two holes for the barrel spacers. And again, I know which one's which because I line them up. These are T6s, so it's the other screw head. I'm just going to get them started with the screw itself. And it should be noted that the pivot I just tightened down so it was snug. I'm going to have to do some adjustments on that. And again, with these two, I'm going to just snug them down and make sure that my blade is centered. I should have, before I started, check out the centering. And you can see right now the blade is not really centered that well. I believe, though, when I tighten everything down, it should fall naturally because since this isn't a liner lock, the centering should pretty much take care of itself if I've done everything correctly. And I can see that this, the pivot just isn't tight at all right now. So I'm going to tighten it down some more. And hopefully that'll straighten out the centering. It's always good when you start to put a knife together to check out the centering beforehand. Make sure you're good. And it's favoring the clip side a little bit. And that would have told me, like, I would have been able to tell if I had done this the proper way. I would have been able to, like, oh, this is favoring the clip side, so the knife maybe just naturally favors that. So I'm going to loosen these a little bit. And then I'm going to push it over to the side it needs to go to. And then I am going to tighten down while I'm pushing the blade over. Another way of doing this is to take a piece of paper and jam it in there while you tighten things down. But I'm able to this time at least. Sometimes it's better to do the paper thing to jam it over. And now you can see perfectly centered. So I tightened it down fairly well while I was pushing the blade over, and that forced it into center. Now this knife, in theory, with a little bit of Loctite in there, really should set for 24 hours before you're really carrying it around a lot and using it. That being said, there's a moment of grace here at the beginning where you can adjust the screws and make sure everything is good. I'm going to go ahead and flip it open. I think it's fairly tight right now. So that grinding sound on the washers is gone. That's great. Action is good, and it will only get better as the grease works its way around all the balls. And then let's check to see how, yeah, so it's perfectly locked right now. There's no blade play. That's great. And it's drop shutting, so I'm looking for a button lock. If I hold it here, it should be able to just drop shut, especially on bearings, and that's what's going to do. The action is great. Right now, that button lock is acting the way that it should. I did not grease the button lock. Just for shits and giggles, I'm going to play around with the pivot a little bit. See what happens when I make it just a little bit tighter. Yeah, so it was a little bit loose. Now it's all the way tight. So check the centering again. Looks good. And I'll go ahead and try to flip it with it fairly tight. I didn't, I wasn't a monster with it, but I tightened it up. And now you see it's not drop shutting. So now I'm going to just back off. The reason I'm doing that is because I want just the perfect tension on, or torque on the pivot screw. It's still just a smidge too tight, so I'm just going to loosen it. And the reason why I want that is for as little blade play as possible. Also, the next time I see this knife is probably going to be another 3 or 4 months away. So I want to, make sure that it's nice, it's got tight, and it's going to be great. All right, so that action is already great. There's no sound there. These back guys are done. The only thing that I haven't put and so I tested, I tested that. I made sure that I'm going to test this last screw. That's nice and tight still. Great. All right. So that's it. The Begleiter 2 154 cm Kaiser knife. Not sure if I've ever reviewed this knife or not, but it's a perfectly great button lock knife. I would call it a budget button lock knife, although it does cost more than $100, so not technically a budget knife. But as far as a button lock goes, this is a perfectly good one to get before you commit big money to something like the Malibu, ProTech Malibu or something like that. If you're interested in just seeing what a button lock feels like and what washers feel like, and a flipper, perfectly great knife. And obviously my dad EDCs this all the time. It's not sharp at all right now, so I'm going to sharpen up with the KME. I've told my dad, and he went ahead and got a strop, and I told him how to use a strop, and he hopefully will take my advice on that, and he is going to start stropping this knife. So, this is 154, perfectly good steel, but if you strop it once a week after heavy use, you will maintain a very nice edge on it for a lot longer. And so when it gets back to me the next time, hopefully it won't be that badly done. There's definitely some damage to the edge of the blade and stuff like that. I did strop it last night. I tried to cut a piece of paper. It would not cut at all. And then I stropped it with some gunny compound, and then it just was barely cutting. But still, I'm going to give him a nice press edge on that. So thanks for joining me today. I would really appreciate if you guys liked my Instagram account, which is also Sharp Ends. And if you liked what you saw today, please like and subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw today and you've watched all the way to the end, I admire your persistence, and you can dislike and unfollow. Thanks, guys. See you next time on Sharp Ends. Bye-bye now.